The yard echoed with a clatter of boots and the sharp bark of orders. Young recruits laughed, their voices bouncing off concrete walls, sharp with the energy of men who hadn't yet learned the weight of silence. "Hey, what kind of tattoo is that? Looks like a grocery store sticker." The group burst into laughter. Sophia Hale, small and quiet, had just slipped off her jacket. Sunlight caught the faint silver tattoo on her wrist. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't colorful. Just a simple metallic mark that shimmered like faded steel. She didn't respond. She never did. Sophia's presence at the training camp was unremarkable to most. 35 years old, barely 5'4", with brown hair pulled low at her neck and eyes that seemed too sharp for someone in technical support. Her badge read Support Logistics. Not officer. Not soldier. Logistics. Her world was simple. Transportation schedules, water supply, repairing equipment no one else bothered to understand. She wore cargo pants, worn work boots, and shirts that had seen better days. Nothing about her screamed danger. If anything, she blended so perfectly into the background that half the recruits forgot she existed at all, except for the tattoo. Now, under the harsh daylight, it seemed to gleam with a strange defiance. An officer stepped forward, frowning. "Cover that up. Now." Before Sophia could reply, a voice cut across the yard. Slow. Heavy. "Wait." Everyone turned. An older man was approaching, his steps deliberate, his face pale. Colonel Robert Shaw, one of the longest-serving veterans, on base. His gaze wasn't on Sophia. It was locked on her wrist, frozen on the silver mark that had made everyone else laugh. His lips trembled as he spoke, barely a whisper. "That tattoo, it's been classified since 2009. The air shifted. The laughter died like a candle snuffed out. Sophia didn't flinch. She simply slid her jacket back on, as if nothing had happened. But the silence that followed told another story. Whispers broke out among the recruits. "What's he mean, classified? Since when do tattoos get classified?" But Sophia didn't hear them. Or maybe she did, but chose not to care. Her world was fixing things, not explaining herself. That afternoon, she was at the weapons bench again. A sergeant grumbled over a loose rifle stock. Sophia stepped in, tools in hand. Her movements were precise, almost surgical. Where an armor might take 20 minutes, she adjusted it in less than 2. The sergeant muttered under his breath, acting like she knows everything. Logistics doesn't know rifles. She didn't argue. She never did. Just a nod. Shoulders slightly hunched, as if carrying something no one else could see. The truth was, most people didn't even remember her name. To them, she was just logistics. Furniture. A background shadow who fixed things and disappeared. But not everyone was blind. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Rowan had been watching. A veteran who'd seen combat in places recruits couldn't imagine. Rowan's eyes narrowed when he saw Sophia move. Her steps had rhythm. Her adjustments weren't lucky guesses. They were muscle memory, the kind carved by years of pressure when a mistake meant someone didn't come home. That evening, he pulled her file. Sophia Hale. Basic information. Previous employment, classified. Emergency contact, none. Next of kin, redacted. Rowan leaned back in his chair, heart thudding slowly. Strange. Too strange. The next morning, a group of recruits spotted Sophia sitting alone in the yard, disassembling a rifle scope. The parts were laid out like instruments before surgery, her hands moving with deliberate calm. A young soldier smirked. "What are you doing, logistics?" "Playing with toys." His buddies laughed, circling her like jackals. Sophia didn't respond. Her fingers moved with a grace that looked almost instinctive, adjusting the scope with micro-movements. Not for show. Not for them. It was habit. Training so deep it had become part of her. The laughter rang hollow. Because anyone truly watching would notice. She wasn't playing. She was calibrating like someone who had done it in the dark, under fire, with lives depending on it. And then, the AI facial recognition system mounted near the yard flickered to life. Cameras whirred. A green beam scanned Sophia's face, then paused. Error. It refocused. Searched databases. Nothing. A red warning blinked across the monitor. Profile erased. Data classified. Do not proceed. The IT technician frowned, typing furiously. He ran another search, this time using an image of the tattoo. The screen turned blood red. Omega Class Identifier. Access denied. Report to Clearance Level 7. The tech swallowed hard. And Lieutenant Colonel Rowan's phone buzzed with the alert. His blood ran cold. He'd heard whispers of Omega before. Stories in dimly lit bars, told by men who had seen too much and drank too much. A unit that didn't exist. Ghosts who completed impossible missions and vanished into silence. But those were just stories, right? Yet now across the yard he saw Sophia Hale. Quiet. Invisible. Fixing scopes like she'd done it 1,000 times. And he knew. The ghost stories were real. Pause. What would you have done, standing there? Would you have laughed at her tattoo, or noticed the way her hands never shook? What is Omega? Why was it buried in silence since 2009? And who exactly is Sophia Hale, the woman everyone thought was just logistics? Night settled heavy over the base. The training yard, loud with drills during the day, now echoed only with the hum of security lights and the faint clink of distant tools. In his office, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Rowan stared at the red warning flashing across his monitor. Omega Class Identifier. Access denied. His throat tightened. Omega. He leaned back in his chair, letting the words settle like ash. He'd heard it before, always whispered, always followed by silence. In Iraq, a captain had once told him, "If you ever hear the word Omega, stop listening." But now the name wasn't a rumor. It was flashing in front of him, tied to a woman who worked in logistics. Sophia Hale. The next morning, Rowan's eyes tracked her across the base. She moved like smoke, present but untouchable. Always working, never talking. Her steps were small, precise. She never rushed, never stumbled. And always, she positioned herself near sightlines to doors, exits, angles that others ignored. Not the habits of a logistics officer. The habits of someone who had lived where survival was never guaranteed. At lunch, a private mocker again. "Hey, logistics lady, this scope's busted. Think you can fix it with your magic sticker tattoo?" Laughter rippled. Sophia didn't rise to it. She simply took the rifle, turned a few screws, tapped a single adjustment, and handed it back. "Try it now," she said quietly. The private smirked, shouldered the rifle, and peered through the scope. His smirk faded. "Dead center," he muttered. "Lucky guess." His friends chuckled, trying to keep the moment light, but Rowan wasn't laughing. He had seen her hands. No hesitation. No doubt. Not luck. Muscle memory. The kind that comes from years in places no one wanted to remember. That evening, Rowan called in favors. Old contacts in Washington. Friends at Intel who owed him for things they didn't want written in after-action reports. Looking into Sophia Hale, he said. Silence. Then a low voice on the other end. "If you're asking about Omega, stop asking. Some doors stay closed for a reason. Some people stay dead for a reason." The line went dead. Rowan sat frozen, phone still pressed to his ear. A chill crawled down his spine. Dead. Meanwhile, Sophia worked quietly in the logistics office. The lamp glowed over her desk as she polished a rifle scope, not because she needed to, but because her hands demanded the ritual. Each piece was laid out in perfect order, the way a surgeon prepares instruments before cutting. She paused for a moment, staring at her reflection in the glass. Her brown eyes seemed older than her 35 years. The tattoo on her wrist, half hidden beneath her sleeve, pulsed faintly in the light. A memory slipped in. A sandstorm. Her cheek pressed against a rifle stock. A hostage's muffled sob in her earpiece. The whisper of her commander, "Omega 7, you're green." Her finger tightened on the trigger. A single shot. Silence. Then the roar of chaos. Sophia blinked hard. The memory dissolved like smoke. She wasn't there anymore. She was here. Logistics. Just logistics. But the base wasn't blind anymore. The story of Colonel Robert Shaw freezing at her tattoo had spread. Recruits whispered in hallways. Did you see the old man's face? Why would a tattoo scare a colonel? She doesn't talk because she's hiding something. Sophia felt the eyes on her, heavier each day. The anonymity she'd built, carefully, patiently, was cracking. One afternoon, during sniper training, she lingered at the edge of the range. Recruits lined up, nervous hands gripping rifles. The atmosphere was sharp with competition. A young soldier dropped his weapon with a loud clang. Red-faced, he scrambled to pick it up. Sophia bent, almost instinctively, and checked it over. Bolt, trigger, scope. Her inspection was professional, precise. Her movements too smooth, too automatic. Civilian area, an officer barked. Step back. But she didn't step back. She adjusted the scope with tiny movements, then handed it back. Don't overcorrect, she murmured. Breathe at the bottom of the exhale. The recruit blinked at her, confused. Then followed her words. One shot later, bullseye. Gasps broke out. How the hell? She just... Before anyone could say more, Sophia rolled her sleeve back slightly, wiping sweat from her wrist. The silver tattoo gleamed. The laughter started again. What even is that? A cheap basketball logo. Looks like something from a county fair. Mockery spread until the wind seemed to shift. A voice rasped from behind them. Impossible. The recruits froze. Colonel Robert Shaw stood at the edge of the range, his face ghost pale, his hands trembling. His eyes were locked on Sophia's wrist, as though it burned him. That symbol, his voice cracked. It's been classified. Banned since 2009. A silence, heavier than gunfire, fell over the yard. The recruits looked between Shaw and Sophia, confusion in their eyes. Shaw stepped forward, his voice trembling now, but commanding. You were Omega 7. Sophia didn't flinch, didn't confirm, didn't deny. She simply looked him in the eye and said, steady and low, I'm just logistics. But those who knew how to listen heard the steel beneath the words. Later that night, Rowan found Shaw leaning against his office desk, staring into nothing. Colonel, Rowan said carefully, what is Omega? Shaw didn't answer at first. His jaw worked, his fists clenched. Finally, he whispered. They used to call her the Silver Ghost. For hostage rescues. No backup. No witnesses. No name, no face. Only the tattoo. He closed his eyes. And if she's here, then ghosts don't stay buried. Pause. What would you do if you discovered the quietest person in the room carried a past louder than war itself? What missions could have been so secret they erased every trace of their soldiers? And why, after all these years, has Sophia Hale resurfaced here, of all places? The storm broke quietly, not in thunder, but in whispers. All across the base, Sophia Hale's tattoo was no longer a joke. Recruits who once mocked her now whispered when she passed, their eyes trailing her like moths to a flame they didn't understand. Did you see Colonel Shaw's face? He went pale as a ghost. What does Omega even mean? Sophia heard none of it. Or maybe she heard all of it and chose silence. That was her way. Silence was her armor. But silence, she knew, could only shield her for so long. Lieutenant Colonel Rowan, however, could no longer remain silent. His office light burned deep into the night. Files, dusty and brittle, lay scattered across his desk. He scoured digital archives, pulling favors, calling numbers only a handful of people had. Everywhere he turned, walls slammed down. Classified. No access. Redacted. But one late-night call connected him to a man he hadn't spoken to in years. Michael. The voice rasped over static. What are you digging into? Omega, Rowan said carefully. The silence that followed was long, suffocating. Finally, the voice answered. If you're smart, you'll stop. Some ghosts are best left buried. Asking about them, asking about her, will bring you nothing but doors slammed shut. Rowan pressed on, his voice low. I saw the tattoo. Silver. Geometric. The system locked down. Who was she? The man's tone turned sharp. Michael, stop. Don't make me hang up. But Rowan didn't. He leaned closer to the phone, almost whispering. I think I already know who she is. A heavy exhale came through the line. Then, listen to me. Omega Force was never supposed to exist. No oversight. No records. They erased everything for a reason. And if she's still alive, then you'd better pray she wants to stay invisible. The call ended. Rowan sat in the dark, the hum of the desk lamp filling the silence. His gut twisted. He wasn't supposed to know more. But the hunger for truth gnawed at him. And in that hunger, he realized something chilling. Sophia wasn't hiding because she was weak. She was hiding because she had to. Meanwhile, across the base, Sophia worked in the logistics office, the one place where shadows felt like home. She disassembled a rifle scope, laying each piece out in flawless symmetry. Her hands were steady, but her mind drifted. Memories rose unbidden, unwelcome. Kandahar, 2009. The air tasted of dust and gunpowder. A hostage cried into a gag. A voice in her earpiece, Omega-7, you're green. She had lined up her shot through a broken window. One breath, one trigger pull. A target fell, and the mission surged forward. Chaos erupted, but she remained calm. She always did. That was her gift. Now, in the quiet office, her reflection in the glass of the scope stared back at her. Older, tired, haunted. She blinked it away and tightened the last screw. Logistics. That's all she was now. Logistics. But ghosts don't retire. They linger. The next morning, a folded slip of paper appeared under her door. Her heart stopped when she read it. Some of us remember Kandahar. Thank you for what you did. You saved more lives than you know. The families of those hostages will never know your name. But they live because of you. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, the paper trembling in her hand. Someone knew. Someone remembered. The walls she had built for over a decade were cracking. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath. She had chosen this life for a reason. She had buried Sophia Hale, the ghost sniper, so she could live as just another face in the crowd. Just another worker in cargo pants and worn boots. But someone was digging, and someone was watching. Later that day, Rowan passed her in the corridor. Their eyes met for a brief moment. He gave her a nod, not of command, but of acknowledgement. A recognition that went deeper than rank. Her gaze lingered, sharp and knowing, before she looked away. For the first time, Rowan felt a chill that wasn't from fear. It was respect. And beneath it, a growing question. How many lives had this quiet woman saved while the world never knew her name? But curiosity is a dangerous thing. That evening, Rowan sat again at his desk, staring at the classified files. His hands shook as he pulled one final thread, an archived photograph from Kandahar. Grainy, distant, faces blurred by shadows and dust. But the sniper's wrist glinted faintly in the picture. The same tattoo. The same mark. His breath caught. It was her. Sophia Hale. Omega-7. The Silver Ghost. Pause. Imagine discovering the invisible person beside you was once the most dangerous ghost in the war. Would you confront them or pretend you never knew? As Rowan digs deeper, the weight of Sophia's past grows heavier. But not all ghosts stay quiet. Some come back to haunt. What happens when others outside the base realize the Silver Ghost is alive? The days that followed felt different. The camp still marched to its rhythm. 6 a.m. drills, 8 a.m. inspections, 12 o'clock lunch. But beneath it all ran a current of unease. Soldiers laughed less. Their eyes lingered longer. Conversations dropped to whispers when Sophia Hale walked by. She felt it. The weight of stares. The silence that wasn't silence at all, but curiosity boiling beneath the surface. And yet, she moved through it all as she always had, quiet, efficient, ghost-like. She repaired, resupplied, disappeared. But inside, her chest tightened. The letter from Kandahar burned in her pocket. Someone knew. Lieutenant Colonel Rowan hadn't slept well in days. His desk was a war zone of classified reports, half-erased files, and scribbled notes. Every thread he pulled led him deeper into shadows he wasn't supposed to walk in. Omega Force. A unit scrubbed from history. Officially disbanded in 2009. But Rowan knew the truth now. They hadn't just disbanded. They had been erased. He stared at the grainy Kandahar photo again. The blurred figure, rifle raised, wrist tattoo catching the sun. A ghost captured in pixels. His hand shook as he whispered, "Sophia, what the hell did you do out there?" One afternoon, during weapons maintenance, Rowan watched her from a distance. A recruit shoved a broken rifle toward her. "Logistics lady, fix this mess." His tone was mocking, careless. Sophia took the weapon without a word. Her fingers moved like liquid, adjustments precise, measured. The kind of work you don't learn from manuals. You learn it on rooftops, under fire, when mistakes cost lives. Within 30 seconds, the rifle was perfect. The recruit snatched it back, muttering to his buddies, "She thinks she's some kind of sniper." Rowan stepped forward then, his voice firm. That wasn't thinking. That was knowing. The recruits fell silent under his stare. Sophia said nothing, just handed over her tools and slipped away. But for the first time, Rowan swore he saw something in her eyes. A flicker. Not pride. Not fear. Something heavier. Like regret. That night, Rowan received a message on his secure line. No sender. No ID. Just a sentence. If the silver ghost is alive, she won't be alive for long. His stomach dropped. Outside eyes were watching. Meanwhile, Sophia sat alone in the logistics office. The lamp cast long shadows as she packed away tools. Her movements were automatic, but her mind raced. She could feel it. The walls closing in. The anonymity she'd lived in for over a decade was unraveling thread by thread. She had chosen this life to be invisible, to be free from the ghosts of Kandahar, Kabul, Mosul, to be nobody. But you can't bury a ghost when the world keeps digging. She pressed her palm against her wrist, feeling the tattoo beneath her skin. Once it had been a mark of belonging, a symbol of the Omega unit. Now it was a curse, an echo of a life she had sworn to abandon. The next morning, whispers turned into fear. The recruits had heard too much. Omega, they whispered. Black budget unit. Impossible missions. Ghost soldiers. Some scoffed. Some shivered. But all of them looked at Sophia differently. No longer a joke. No longer invisible. Now, a legend walking among them. Colonel Robert Shaw called Rowan into his office that evening. His face was pale, eyes shadowed by old memories. "You've been digging, haven't you?" Shaw asked quietly. Rowan didn't deny it. Shaw leaned closer, voice rough. "You want the truth? Omega Force was the knife we never admitted holding. They went where no one else could. Missions that weren't supposed to exist. And Sophia Hale," he swallowed hard. "She was the sharpest edge." Rowan's blood chilled. "What happened to them?" he asked. Shaw's eyes darkened. "They were erased. For their safety and for ours. People like Sophia don't get medals. They get shadows. That was the deal." He gripped Rowan's arm. His voice dropped to a warning. "Don't push her. Don't ask her. If she's here, it's because she wants to be forgotten. And if others find out, they won't let her live." But it was already too late. That night, Sophia returned to her quarters to find another note under her door. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. "We remember Kandahar. We remember Omega. And so do others. Leave before they come." Her pulse quickened. She looked out the window into the darkness beyond the yard. For a moment, she swore she saw a shadow move. A figure watching. Then gone. Her chest tightened. She had wanted to be ordinary. To be forgotten. But ghosts, she realized, don't get to choose when they're remembered. Pause. If you carried secrets the world wasn't supposed to know, would you keep running, or finally let the truth surface? Sophia must decide, disappear again, or face the past that refuses to die. And Rowan will learn that some legends are written not in metals, but in silence. Dawn broke soft over the training camp. The air was still, almost too still, as if the base itself held its breath. Sophia Hale walked through the yard one last time. Boots crunching gravel. Hands steady, though her chest was heavy. The whispers of Omega had grown too loud. The notes under her door too pointed. The shadows at night too close. She knew what it meant. The world had remembered her. And ghosts don't get to stay once the world remembers. Lieutenant Colonel Rowan stood by the mess hall, watching her. Something in her stride told him everything he needed to know. She was leaving. He felt it in his bones. "Where will you go?" he asked quietly when their paths crossed. Sophia didn't stop walking, didn't break stride. She only said, "Away." Her voice carried the finality of someone who had made peace with being forgotten. Rowan wanted to stop her, to demand answers, to tell her she didn't have to carry it alone. But the words died in his throat, because deep down he knew Sophia Hale had lived 1,000 lives she couldn't speak of, and none of them had room for goodbyes. By dawn the next day, her quarters were empty, bed made, desk cleared. No trace she had ever been there, save for a single folded paper placed neatly on the weapons bench she always worked from. Rowan picked it up with shaking hands. In careful handwriting, it read, "Don't judge anyone by the uniform they wear, or don't wear. The strongest people are often the ones who choose not to show it." Word spread through the camp like wildfire. The recruits who once laughed at her tattoo now spoke of her in hushed tones. She moved like a soldier. Her eyes, she'd seen things we couldn't imagine. That rifle stock she fixed, it's still perfect. She had become a legend, not through words, not through medals, but through absence. Colonel Shaw, old and weary, sat alone in his office that evening. He stared at the silver flask on his desk, his hands trembling. "The silver ghost," he muttered. "I thought she was gone. Maybe she still is." And Rowan carried the weight differently. Every time he saw a soldier mock a support worker, he stopped them cold. Every time someone overlooked the quiet ones, he reminded them, not all strength shouts. Some strength whispers. Months passed. The camp returned to its rhythm. New recruits arrived. Old ones graduated. Boots still clattered in the yard. Rifles still cracked on the range. Life moved on. But something had changed. There was more respect now. More weight in the way soldiers looked at those in the background. The cooks. The mechanics. The medics. The logisticians. The ones who didn't wear medals or hold rifles, but without whom no mission could stand. Because they remembered. Because they whispered. Because of the woman with the silver tattoo, who had disappeared like a ghost. And in quiet corners, the stories grew. Some said she had taken down a terrorist cell alone. Others claimed she had stopped a nuclear incident no one ever knew about. But none of them could prove it, because there were no files, no medals, no name, only the tattoo, and the silence. Rowan still thought of her sometimes. He would stand at the edge of the yard in the evening, watching the sun drop behind the hills. He'd think about the note she left, the look in her eyes, the way her hands never shook. He'd think about the strength it took to disappear, to choose shadows over glory, to carry lives saved but never acknowledged. And he would whisper to himself, as if speaking to the wind, "Ghosts aren't myths. They're people who learned how to vanish so well, the world forgets they were ever real." Pause. What do you think? Are the strongest people the ones whose names we remember, or the ones who never need to be remembered at all? Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary, only to realize later they carried a depth you couldn't imagine? If you also believe strength doesn't always have to be loud,